Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hi everyone, this is Stuart Andrew Alexander back again with another impact-making guest who's most certainly an impact maker within his own right, and we're going to find out just why in a few short moments. But let's just take a while to introduce him to the show. Today's guest is someone who is hired by businesses, individuals, and organizations when they want to improve their networking, public speaking, and presentation skills. They do that because they know speaking opportunities are business, career, and leadership opportunities. That's his mantra. No one ever challenges that statement. And when you think about it, why would they? As he shows them how to develop, practice, and deliver a knock your socks off presentation with no sweat. And he's here today, ladies and gentlemen, to talk to us about some of the problems, obstacles, some of the misconceptions, the pitfalls, and some of the fears surrounding the individuals and organizations he loves to help the most. So please, welcome to the show, founder of No Sweat Public Speaking, Fred Miller. Fred, are you there?
I am, Stuart, and thank you very much for having me.
You are so welcome, Fred. It's good to have you on the show. So let's jump straight in and set the tone for the rest of the show. Could you briefly, in your own words, of course, explain to us who's your perfect prospect, Fred? Who is it that you help?
Someone who wants to increase their public speaking skills, wants to hone them, and they want to do that, as you said in the introduction, because they know that speaking opportunities are business, career, and leadership opportunities. You know, companies give presentations all the time, internally and externally. Most of them stink. And we can always improve that. And that fear of public speaking, which we'll talk about a little bit later, that holds so many people back from reaching their potential.
So the businesses and individuals and organizations that we just briefly touched on, the ones that hire you to come in and improve their networking and public speaking skills, briefly describe what are some of the obstacles that you come across while you're working with these people?
Well, a lot of it's the fear of public speaking. You know, there are individuals who they're great at what they do, but they don't want to get in front of a group. And I think that becomes more and more clear as we look at the way young people, more young people than people our age, communicates by texting and email. They don't look at people, and they get out of their comfort zone. They don't realize when we get out of our comfort zone, we expand it. But there's so many benefits to it because we perceive really good speakers as experts. We like to work with experts. Experts command more money for their products and services. But more and more, and I just read a survey on this, the number one soft skill that companies find lacking in new hires is communication. You could be the best programmer in the world or accountant or engineer, but if you can't communicate with your fellow employees, with prospects, with your boss, sometimes with customers because they might call you in as the expert, that's really going to hurt your career. I mean, let me give a little sidebar. A lot of the individual consulting I do, it's someone calling, and they're going to do it on their own nickel. They say, you know, I'm sick and tired of people who don't contribute as much to the company as I do. They're not working as hard, but they're getting bonuses, recognition. Sometimes they're getting promotions because they're speaking. And they're not even that good, but they're up there, and I'm sitting on my butt.
Yeah, but if they're sat on their butt, then, Fred, then logic tells me not a lot's going to happen, right?
That's right. You got to make it happen. And there's people who, you know, all you can do is go forward, and they can moan and groan about the past, but if they want to advance their careers, if they want to have a better life, they'll do that. And the fact is, and you know this, Stuart, we get out of our comfort zone. As I said, we make it larger. Also, the learning is in the doing. And as they research those presentations, as they work on those skills, they make themselves far more valuable to their current employer Although in this economy, that doesn't last forever, too. And I think people have to have that mindset that we're all self-employed. And the fact is, there may be somebody in an audience seeing you give a presentation for your company, and they might say, that guy Stewart, man, he's really good. We need people like that. Let's give him our card. Let's have a conversation. He may not stay with that company. That's how it's done these days. Communication is just, it's lacking, and it's not taught in school like it used to be. You know, people join Toastmasters. I was a Toastmaster for years, but not enough people. They have to see that need. And, you know, it's the old thing, we don't do anything until we're hurting enough. And when somebody sees themselves being passed by for promotions, they're not advancing their career, you know, what can I do about it? And becoming a great communicator can make all the difference in the world. I'm sure you find that in your business, don't you?
It's also a great time-saving factor as well, because instead of speaking to one person, you can speak to a room full of 10, 20, 50, 100 people and deliver the same message at the same time. So if you can master that skill of public speaking, then it's also a massive time saver and helps to develop and move your business exponentially forward. So that's also a great benefit. So yeah, I totally understand what you're saying, Fred.
Well, you just made a good point. It's a skill. And here's the thing. It's a skill you can learn. Let me tell you a story. And for those listening, stories, everyone has stories, and it's all about the backstory. Let me tell you a story. I got a call a few years ago from an OBGYN. I live in St. Louis. She was in New York. She was coming to St. Louis. Terrible fear of public speaking. I could hear in her voice, and she told me, she said, this is really a challenge because I'm going to have to present to colleagues. I'm going to be teaching a class. Can you help me? And I said, I don't know, doctor. Can I ask you some questions? And she said, sure. I said, you're an OBGYN. That means you deliver baby boys and baby girls, right? And she says, yes. I said, well, let me ask you a question. Have you ever delivered a baby public speaker? And she said, no. I said, well, let me ask you another question, doctor. You're an adult. You're a doctor. You've dealt with death. It's part of life. Do you know anyone who's passed away while giving a presentation? And she said, no, I don't. I said, doctor, you just proved something. There's not a public speaking gene that we're either born or not born with. It's a relatively safe activity to engage in. Somewhere between birth and death, it's a skill we can learn. You weren't born knowing how to drive a car, use a computer. I said, doctor, you went to medical school. You've done tougher things. And those people who are afraid that they can't do it, they just have to get some training, read some books, watch videos, join Toastmasters, go hire a coach. But it's tremendous. I mean, I got a call yesterday from a guy. He's in an executive position. He's been pushed into doing presentations. He knows the value. And he just says, I've got to step this up. And I know that I should be not just taking the ones that are thrust upon me. I need to go out and get other ones. He says, this is true. He said, I've got a couple kids. It's going to be a legacy if I can show them how to communicate. He just realizes how important that is.
So, Fred, let me ask you a question. Are public speakers, I mean, you kind of touched on it already, but I've got to ask it anyway. Are public speakers born or made?
I think they're made. I think sometimes people have a gift for gab. I know you do. There are different profiles. If you're familiar with DISC and Myers-Briggs, some of us are much more outgoing than others. People who are introverts, it's a real challenge. But the fact is, again, if we get out of that comfort zone, we make it larger. I mean, learning begins at the edge of our comfort zone. Some people have an easier time at it, but we can all improve. I mean, I'm learning stuff every single day, and there's some basics to it. Well, let's talk about the fear of public speaking. First of all, and I know this would be of interest to people listening, why we have the fear of public speaking. The first thing I say is, why not? Most of our conversations are one-on-one. Many of those are on the phone, like this one. Yeah, I don't see you, you don't see me. More and more people communicating by text and email, you don't see or hear them. If you get up in front of a group, well, that's out of your comfort zone. That's why you're a little bit uncomfortable. But there are reasons people should have that fear of public speaking, Stuart. Number one, if you don't know what you're talking about, Don't get up in front of an audience unless you have a lot of knowledge about that topic. One of the fears people have is they know more than I do. I'm going to put them to sleep. They're going to keep looking at their watch. They can't wait to get out of here. Well, make sure you know your stuff. The second thing is, if you don't know the formula, if you don't know the recipe for a speech, there's a structure, and it's like the recipe for a great cake. There are specific ingredients in specific amounts. You add at specific times. You do specific things to them, and you get a great presentation. I mean, how many times have you been to a presentation and the speaker just got up there and he winged it and he's repeating himself and he's getting off topic? That's terrible. And the third thing is, if you have not practiced, practicing is not optional. I went to a meeting, we were coaching some TEDx people last night, and there was a lady coaching them on drama. She's an actress, she's a director. She said before a play ever opens, they have practiced for 3 weeks. Why would somebody think you can get up in front of an audience and just wing it? That's crazy. I mean, we had the Olympics last year in Sochi. Does anybody think those great athletes just got up there in the morning and said, I think I'll get on those pieces of wood and go down that hill? That doesn't look that hard.
Yeah, sure.
These people devote years of their life to that. Steve Jobs, and he was my presentation hero. If he had a 90-minute keynote presentation coming up on a new Apple product or service, he would practice for weeks. And this is a guy who's considered the best of the best. Bands that have been together for 30 days will rehearse before a concert.
Exactly.
And I think that's part of the problem. People think, well, I'll go over it a couple times in my mind and I'll just get it up there and I have my notes there. No, absolutely not.
I think a trap that people can easily fall into is when these well-practiced, well-rehearsed speakers go on the stage, like Steve Jobs, for example, and he just makes it look so easy. It's easy to fall into the trap thinking, that's easy. Look, he's just doing that. Anybody can do that.
No, that's a good point. And you look at athletes, and they make it look easy too, but what goes on behind the scenes, spring training, workouts, people, I mean, it's unbelievable if you figure the amount of playing time versus practice time or working out, whatever you call it. It's phenomenal. It's infinitesimal, the time they spend actually at the meet or in the game. It's practice. And if you relate that to sports, and people seem to be able to relate to that a lot better, I mean, any athlete, they don't just go to the game. There's a lot that happens before that. It's kind of the iceberg effect. The tip of the iceberg is their performance. That iceberg, and most of an iceberg is below water. Well, that's all the prep that goes into it.
So, Fred, what are some of the misconceptions that you come across on a regular basis of people wanting to improve their public speaking skills, but they may have bought into some popular belief, albeit true or not true? Can you just maybe name one or two of those so we can just squash those right now?
Well, I think some of it's head trash. They don't think that, what we call it, the imposter syndrome. Had a guy come in a couple of weeks ago, coached him. He was going to give a presentation to a group he hadn't met before, and his head trash was that they knew more about the topic. Now, the crazy thing about this, Stuart, the topic was an app ad block, and I can't remember the whole story of it, but I think they came out with this app, and then the person who developed it pulled it back. He was going to talk about a topic that nobody really knew anything about, but he had this head trash from when he was playing football. The coach said to him, You got to watch out for the other team because they are working harder than you're working sometimes. And this was really bothering him. And I looked at him, I said, wait a minute, you got this all wrong. The coach is talking to that audience. You're the guy they're talking about. Nobody knows more about this than you. And he just wrote, true story, he wrote me yesterday evening, he nailed that presentation. He did some little techniques to take away the fear. It's worth mentioning now. The one that he mentioned, I call it meet and greet. It's so much easier to talk to someone who you've met before. I mean, I've stood at the entrance to auditoriums and shaken the hand of everyone. Nice firm handshake, look you right in the eye, say, Stuart, I'm Fred. Thanks very much for coming here today. I really appreciate your attendance. It's so much easier to talk to those people. Now, the other thing I used to do that for myself, but I didn't realize till somebody told me I've given them a stroke. And most speakers never do that. They come from behind the curtain. And you might come in and thought, gee, I didn't even want to be here. My boss made me, but this guy Fred seems pretty nice. I never had a guy, greet me like that. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I'll pay attention. Well, you could become my hero in the audience. You could be the guy I gain energy from. That's one of the things. And I think the other thing sometimes, and this maybe it's a stereotype we have that isn't true. Doctors, lawyers, people who are very successful, smart people think they're good at everything. And unfortunately, presentation skills may not be it. I mean, I remember I was talking to a friend of mine who's a physician. I said, have you ever thought about setting up a Toastmasters group at the hospital? He said nobody would come. None of these guys would ever admit that they can't be the best at everything. Isn't that interesting?
That's very interesting. In terms of some of the pitfalls that are out there, could you just share some of those that you've experienced? And PowerPoints, now that's a good one. Please,
oh my gosh, people, they bring up PowerPoint. It says text. I type in text. I hit enter. Oh, more text. And they have this, a friend just sent me his presentation. I can't believe it's a good friend. The problem is we cannot multitask. If they're reading your bullet points, they are at a different position than you are, and there's a complete disconnect. Bullet points do not reinforce a message. They conflict with the message. They confuse the audience. There's just no good from it.
Fred, that flies in the face of everything what most people have been taught about public speaking and presentations.
That's the opportunity I have, Stuart, to re-educate them.
Well, I'm all ears, and I'm sure the listeners are all ears, because I'm sure the majority of them have been taught exactly this point, what you're just bringing up now.
Well,
so please continue.
The friend of mine, he's a PhD, he's a meteorologist. He presented this to 100 people, and he sends me his slides, and I really thought he was kidding. I said, were these your slides? He said, yes. Oh, my gosh. No, here's what you should do. Use high-quality, universally understood images. And let me give you an example. Even if I'm talking to left-brain people like accountants and engineers, if I say the word apple, you don't see the letters A-P-P-L-E. You probably see something round, red. Am I correct? Yeah. Okay, let's try another one now. And I'll have a slide go up, black text, white background, kiwi fruit. My next slide shows this beautiful kiwi. It's cut in half. I mean, it's just gorgeous. And then I say, let's do like the eye doctor. Better. No, nobody ever says, go back to that text. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to get out of this seminar and go buy some kiwi. Here's the thing. People have three learning styles. Visual, probably 65% of us are visual learners. 35% probably are auditory. We learn by listening. And then the rest are kinesthetic. They write things down. I have a friend, if he were in this room, he'd be writing everything down. If you can appeal to two or more of those learning styles, that increases the odds the audience gets it. And getting it is the bottom line of all communication, verbal, written, or visual. You got to get it. It's also a lot easier to develop a presentation if you're using images and stories because you know those. Trying to memorize a speech with text and putting bullet points up there, boring and very hard to do.
Does everybody have a combination of those three learning styles?
I think most of us are visual learners, and a great way to start that, I'll start presentations like this. Picture this. Now, imagine. Come with me if you would, please. Things like that, because we can picture in our mind's eye. In fact, here's a great story. We had two movie reviewers here in the United States. They both passed away, Siskel and Ebert. And I remember somebody interviewing them, and he said, what's the best medium? Is it radio, TV, or the big screen? They didn't hesitate, Stuart. They both said radio. Nothing can replace in your mind's eye. Give you an example. I used to be in the coffee business, and if I put a coffee cup up, I could use that as my prop. Talk about different blends of coffee, different brewing equipment, temperatures, grinds, things like that. And then I should put that cup away. But I could also do this. I could say, picture your favorite coffee cup. Now, maybe it's the one your son or your daughter made for you. Maybe you won that cup. Maybe you won that cup. Or maybe you got it on a special vacation. I know it's a cheap cup and it's cracked, but picture that cup. Well, now I've personalized it. Made an emotional connection, and that's what you want to do in a presentation, make an emotional connection.
Could you then also bring in the other senses like this, like taste and smell also?
Oh, yeah.
Using that scenario of the coffee cup.
Yeah, absolutely. That's tremendous. Yeah, the more senses you can bring in, it makes it more real for them. That's an excellent thing. I like that. And you can even have that in your images. You could have picture of a cup of coffee, but if you have the steam coming up and say, oh, can you smell that coffee in the morning? Well, yeah, they almost can. You'll have people salivating. I'm sure when they look at that black...
Somebody outside in the next room, could you bring me a coffee, please? I want a coffee right now.
Oh, yeah. But they won't do that if they're looking at black text on a white background.
Right.
Oh, and it's so much easier to develop the presentation that way. But let me give a couple of basics. I think that's important to your audience. There's two components to a presentation, content and delivery. Content is your message. Delivery is presenting it. Of the two, delivery trumps content. You could be the world's leading expert on anything, on trees, on engineering, anything. But if you can't present that in a manner that educates, entertains, and explains it well, they'll never get it. Now, on the delivery side, this is extremely important. There's verbal and nonverbal communication. Nonverbal trumps verbal. We believe what we see. And if you're getting mixed messages, like if I was saying, Stu, I'm really enjoying this interview, and my eyes are rolling, and they could see me, that's what they would believe. Nonverbal trumps verbal. And if you think what's going on here in the States with the people running for president and the speeches they're giving, one of the reasons Trump is ahead is because of his gestures. He is so motivated with his gestures, they get people's attention. He's animated. He's doing those gestures all the time. And in the first 7 seconds of a presentation, you kind of make up your mind. He doesn't necessarily have the content. I also noticed this. I saw him give a speech yesterday, and the lectern he was standing behind, I always recommend don't stand behind the lectern. It forms a physical and an emotional barrier between you and the audience. But his lectern was lower than most. And the microphones were single and they were high, but you could see all of his body movement. You look at other speakers, they're staying behind a lectern, they're reading their script. It's terrible. I mean, it's just terrible. You can see the difference. And I think that's one of the reasons he's getting so much publicity, is because he is so animated and catches people's attention. Turn off the sound sometime and watch some of these speakers. It's quite a lesson. Does that make sense to you, Stuart?
That makes absolute sense. And you wouldn't think that such a subtle difference between the height of the actual podium would make such a big difference. But as you said that and I was visualizing it in my mind's eye, then yes, I could just imagine just what a huge impact that would have, just being able to see the body language and to be able to see or to recognize the congruency between the body language and what was being said at the same time. So yeah, that's a great tip. That's really, really good that you shared that with us, Fred.
Well, he also doesn't read anything. He's totally unscripted, but he knows what he's going to say, and he has that eye contact with the audience. He's looking at them because he might even call somebody out. He said, I saw your hand go up, sir. I'm glad you get it. Whereas you have some people, and they keep looking at their script. I mean, I heard one of Jeb Bush's soldiers, if you would, say, Jeb, quit reading your stuff. Drink some Red Bull. I mean, come on, man. You know, you're putting to sleep. And Trump has used that by saying he's got no energy. He's a low energy person. People are attracted to people with energy. That's how it is.
Fred, let's talk about some of the emotional and logical reasons why someone would want to improve their networking and public speaking skills.
Well, one good point, and thanks for asking the question. There are no more jobs cradle to grave. My dad had one job his whole life. That just isn't done. And people have to realize they may have to look for work, or they may want to look for work. And they're going to have to learn how to network. They're going to have a great elevator speech. They're going to have to know how to, carry themselves when they're networking, when they get interviews. It's very, very important. It's part of it that everyone has a mindset that they're self-employed these days. And speaking is a big component of that. We talked about this a little bit before the show. Everyone wants to be seen as an expert. We like to work with experts. Experts command more money for their products and services. And what we should do is build an expert stool. And there's 3 legs: speaking, writing, on and offline, and then promoting it through the social media in any way you can. Because what you want to do if you're in business for yourself, or if you've submitted a resume to get hired by a company, they could say, well, Stuart, I've got your resume. Looks really good. I looked at your website. Good stuff, really good stuff there. And everyone should have their own website. And they say, well, Stuart, how do I find out more about you? And if you've built this expert stool, and it's a process, it's not an event, you can say, Google me. I love that phrase, because what you're saying is, hey, don't take my word for it. Check me out. And it works.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I Googled you. You got a lot of stuff out there. You're an expert. I'm honored to be your guest. No, I had a situation yesterday. A guy got in touch with me by email, wanted to know about private coaching. He joined Toastmasters by me to fast forward a little bit his presentation skills. And I looked him up. I found out where he worked. I looked at a little bit of his history. He was from another country. He had a law degree. He had a master's in social work. I knew a lot before I even talked to him. Well, I get to talking to him, and he starts mentioning all of my videos that he had looked at. I mean, that's what people do these days. They check people out. And if there's nothing out there, you know what? I may Google that particular skills again and find somebody where I can verify that I'm not going to be wasting my time talking to somebody who doesn't know his stuff. I already had credibility with this guy because, quite frankly, I've been doing this for a long time. I mean, you've got a lot of credibility. You've published a number of books. You've got this radio show. You've done a lot of stuff. I had to think about, I get requests for interviews and stuff all the time. I'm thinking, am I really going to talk to this guy? What's in it for me? Well, you've got a great following. I thought, this is great. And if I do a good job, that'll be good for me. That might bring more listeners to your show. It's a win-win for both of us. You checked me out before you called. You didn't just go through, let me see a guy's name, Miller. That sounds like a good name. Let me call this guy. No. You did your research because I built my expert stool. You did the same thing.
Well, it's tantamount to an online footprint, build your online footprint so that people can find you, first of all. And when they find you, they will then be able to trust you. And when they trust you, then they will choose you. So, that's something I always say to people when I'm speaking with them, consulting. I says, can you be found online at first? What do people find? If I Google your name right now, what will I find out about you?
Videos are great these days too, because they let you see and hear them. And somebody might, read all of your credentials. Sounds like this guy's really good. And you watch a video and you fall asleep halfway through it. Well, I might want to look at someone else. Right, but that's tremendous to do. The video is just, YouTube has become the second greatest search engine. I mean, I was looking at this morning. I do videos. I'm trying to improve my lighting. I Googled, infinite white background lighting, and I watched 3 videos this morning because you always want to watch a number. Just because it's up there doesn't mean they know what they're doing. But I could tell, and I picked up some great tips. And it's a lot easier to watch a video and listen because you're getting those 2 learning, they're appealing to 2 of my learning styles, visual and auditory. Absolutely. And I picked up some great things.
Yeah, and I mean, this morning I Googled girls in high heel shoes, and I picked up some great tips too, but that's beside.
No, it's funny. No, you get some great ideas, and if you discipline yourself, this is one of the things I would emphasize to everyone. Discipline yourself to blog regularly. I used to do it once a week. It's been 4 years now, probably every other week, and some of those are video and some are slides. But that discipline of doing 600 to 1,000 words weekly, the learning is in the doing. You learn something every single time you do it. And let me throw out this tip because I think it's important. One of the best tips I can give people is to put the audio of that post on the post also. And let me tell you the backstory. A friend of mine who gave me some great advice in terms of internet marketing had a regular website, updated all the time. I went to it one day and I saw a little audio button. And I thought, oh, that's cool. And I clicked the button, and he's reading his post. And I'm listening and reading along with him. I'm thinking, wait a minute, why am I reading it? I mean, here's the author with the inflections he wants to give it and the pauses. I can always refer to the text. I thought it was great. And then I realized, wow, it's an iTunes podcast channel, too. That's another place Google finds. I decided to do it myself. Got an iTunes podcast channel, recorded my first post. It was a very humbling experience. I found grammatical errors. I found spelling errors. I had to rewrite parts of that post. And when I listened, Stuart, that was a little humbling, too. My voice trailed off sometimes. Once in a while, I might have mumbled. But that combination of written posts plus audio posts, guaranteed, will make you a better speaker and a better writer. And take that to the next level and do a video. And then separate the audio out and also put the text into it as a transcript. Video lets you see and hear yourself the way others see and hear you. That can also be extremely humbling.
Fred, let's talk about your solution. If there's somebody out there who wants to develop and practice their signature presentations, and they're listening to this show right now, and they're thinking, Fred sounds like a pretty cool guy. He definitely knows what he's talking about. I've Googled his name. There's plenty of great information out there, but I want to know how to find out about him. So first of all, tell us a little bit about your solution. What's it called? Does it have a name? Does it have a brand? And then afterwards, please tell us how people will be able to get in touch with you. Go ahead.
Well, we've got a website, and thanks for asking, nosweatpublicspeaking.com. Got a lot of links on there to my SlideShare channel, which LinkedIn just bought, which is going to make that a lot better. YouTube channel. Great information there. I've got a book, as you have, Stuart, on Amazon.com. A lot of good information there. I would tell people, if you buy my book, email me the receipt. I'll email you a 42-page PDF workbook that goes hand in glove with it. I also advise joining Toastmasters. It's a longer trek to do it, but Toastmasters is an international organization. They have 2 tracks, leadership and communication, a very nurturing environment. I always advise that. But I, like you, do individual consulting. I coach. I'm in the States, in St. Louis, Missouri. I coach a lady in Mumbai, India.
Wow.
Yeah, awesome. By Skype. It was kind of cool. The first time she found me. Wow. and we set it up. We're 11 hours apart. And when our video came up, both of us went, oh, my gosh.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I'm speaking to you from Cairo right now, Fred. You know that, yeah?
Really?
I'm in Cairo. Yeah, I'm in Cairo. I'm in a location in Cairo at the moment. So.
Oh my gosh! I was there earlier this year. I was in Cairo. That's fantastic. That's what it is. You point out it's an international community now, and Skype. Exactly. And I'm a Mac guy, so FaceTime. And you really want to have that face to face, because, as we talked about earlier, nonverbal communication trumps verbal, and you can really help that individual out. And there's a lot of people who do what I do. And I would recommend Google the person, watch their videos, read some of their stuff, try to find one that's a fit. It just makes sense. I mean, I'm not a fit for everyone, but that's the way you'll find somebody that's a fit for you, and it's well worth the time and investment. You can't do anything better than invest in yourself. And you and I are doing this all the time with the equipment we buy, the training that we take, the training we give. We have to study. We have an investment in that. But, if you don't grow, and things are going exponentially these days, you're just not going to reap the benefits of a great life.
Okay, Fred. I could sit here and listen to you talk all day, because you're just so full of informational, educational content that's just really so helpful. But unfortunately, we have run out of time. So before we say our goodbyes, have you got any other final thoughts, or maybe one tip before we leave, please, Fred?
Thanks for asking. My best tip for becoming a best speaker. The silver nugget, second best tip, is practice, practice, practice. The learning. And then the second tip, the golden nugget, if you want to become a better speaker and lessen that fear of public speaking, is speak. Speak, speak, speak as many times as you can to as many audiences. You know, I've got a lot of people who say, well, I got to wait till I get this together. I got to wait for this. Zig Ziglar, a famous motivator who died several years ago, said, if you wait till all the lights are green, you never leave home. So the learning is in the doing. And what's the worst that could happen? You know, you give a bad speech. I guarantee everyone in that audience is glad you're up there and not them. And they want you to succeed. And don't try to be perfect. But you have to do it. The more you do it, the better you get. And I think that's with anything. We talked about sports earlier. You know, the athletes who do lots of practicing and working out do better.
Perfect. Fred, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you coming on to the show and sharing your experience and your insights with our listeners. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tuning in. This was yours truly, Stuart Andrew Alexander, saying goodbye, take care, and we will talk really soon. Fred, if you'd just like to say a final goodbye.
Make your presentation no sweat.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.